Welcome back to Community of Writers. I'll be your host today, Anthony Slovak, and with me is TC Tolbert. TC.
How's it going?
Thanks for being here. It's going great.
Awesome.
TC Tolbert often identifies as a trans and genderqueer feminist collaborator, dancer, and poet, but really, he's just a human in love with humans doing human things. You made your bio a poem, and we'll talk about that later. The author of Guyfromania by Ashita Press, 2014, and 4 chapbooks. TC is also co-editor, along with Trace Peterson, of Troubling the Line, Trans and Genderqueer Poetry and Poetics. He is an EMT and spends his summers leading wilderness trips for Outward Bound. TC teaches both at Pima and at U of A and OSU Cascades. TC was also recently named Tucson's Poet Laureate. So thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. And just a minor correction.
Yes.
I don't teach at Pima anymore.
Right.
But I love Pima.
TC loves Pima.
So.
Has taught at Pima.
That's right.
We'll have that conversation after the
That's
episode.
Right.
But the way I like to start is just to ask you to read a poem, if you would, and maybe that'll inspire our talk or our questions from our online students.
Sure. I think I'll just start with a pretty new poem. I have been, which my bio alludes to, I'm transgender, and my name is TC, but my birth name was Melissa. And so I've been in this place recently where I've been writing poems to Melissa, sort of to imagine or maybe imagine a conversation with her, like, would she be proud of the life I'm living? You know, was this what she foresaw when she was thinking about, like, couldn't actually imagine transitioning as a teenager, but just imagining the life I would live or who I would become. So this poem is called Felo de Se, Melissa, and that literally means felon of himself or suicide. So that was something that I struggled with quite a bit for a while, and so I'm often sort of like thanking her for making it through. So, Felo de Se, Melissa. Physicists say we change an object simply by turning our attention to it. Really, I am a grandson only when we are eating at Panera. One of us is lying always about her particular hunger. I love the children outside of me counting to 30 while covering their eyes. Whose body will we sacrifice to be in the company of another? I haul the husk of her each day across my ongoing. Fire towers are designed for distance viewing, and I am right here, above you. No one is listening to ice become water. Call me brother when you don't know who I could be. Time's psychologic and legal assault, burying you to keep us alive. That's so beautiful. Thanks.
I'm reminded of Wordsworth. In the Prelude, Simile for Autobiography, he writes about being on a boat and looking downward, and it's sort of this metaphor for looking backward on his life and seeing things that maybe weren't there, but he sees them now. And this fire tower image seems to be something making a similar simile, maybe not exactly what he's talking about there, but is that, would you say that that's something, you know, how is that perspective for you in terms of like looking back?
Yeah, I didn't intentionally recall Wordsworth, although I wish I had.
You know, we just had Kristen Nelson, and we were talking about how different readers bring different things. And so I like to think sometimes that poetry is like this exercise in semiotics, where we try to get as much associations as possible, and then we share it and we see where the meaning takes us.
Absolutely.
So
it's conversation.
Right.
I mean, it's sort of, this is a place for us to meet on the page, if not in real life. So. Yeah, I absolutely love that. I love that you bring Wordsworth to this. I really, I feel honored. But But yeah, that I feel like in my life I'm just someone who's naturally interested in like the seams or the bridges of things, and how the perspective of looking back and forward. I mean, that is the present moment, right? Like being in between these two sort of binaries, so to speak. And so yeah, so I'm constantly searching for those physical places, fire towers, prow of a ship, and the internal places where that takes place.
Well, that leads me to two questions I might, and I think I'll start with the change question, right? And so one of my students writes, how much can poetry writing change someone? And I guess, you know, to me, I always like to think of these as prompts, so wherever that takes you.
Yeah, I love this question. I mean, and I've written quite a bit about and think a lot about how poetry is, in fact, how I came to transition. Which for some people might be the red flag of poetry. But in all seriousness, it gave me a way to practice being myself on the page, to sort of take measured risks. And that could even be with syntax, right? Like there is a sort of normative syntax. What if on the page I flip some of this stuff around and see what meaning comes of that? Or I loved what Kristen did earlier with her book, you know, where she was showing parts of it. So if it's okay, I'll show parts of Gafiromania to illustrate this. Gafiromania literally means addiction to or an obsession with bridges. And so the book itself is laid out where it starts with these horizontal pieces, and then as you go on, it becomes what is this? Vertical, and then goes back to horizontal again, back to vertical, back to horizontal. So it's doing that. That experimentation with what sort of orientation is the body,
right?
In this book,
so much phenomenology comes to mind.
Yeah. But it really was a place for me to practice being alive and to say, like, I don't know who I'll be in the world or how I will show up, but I can take risks here. I can experiment here, and experiment with taking up space, a thing that I was so, you know, sort of afraid to do, and that it's certainly not encouraged for women, and certainly not for queer women, you know, to take up any sort of space. Right. So I was really practicing, like, use it all, you know, see what happens when you use it all, and then getting really small and using, like, and in fact, there's a lot of sonnets in this book where I'm, okay, now hold it all in. Right.
Well, I love that. Yeah. For you, poetry was a place of play, but also a safer place. I have a lot of students who tell me that, you know, they're scared of poetry. You know, I'm like, it's not going to bite you, right? And then, but to really, you know, to go into the community and to see just how welcoming everyone is and encouraging to express yourself in that way. So
Can I add something?
Of course.
I mean, I also get why people are afraid of poems. I mean, I think on one level, we're taught that we should understand language and we should be the masters of it in our communication. And poetry sort of, at least, steps back from that it is a kind of communication, but it's not, let me just tell you what I'm thinking, you know? Right. And in some ways, I think the beauty of poetry is letting the language in the writing of it or in the reading of it get ahead of our understanding, so that we're then reaching for it, and we get to discover new places in ourselves and in other people. So I get the fear of it because there's something mysterious about it. That I remember seeing another question on there, something about, like, once you know how to write a poem, do you kind of always know how to write a poem? And
is it like riding a bike, or is it something once you get, you lose it?
Exactly, and I would say it's not at all like riding. It's like learning to ride a bike every time you sit down to the blank page. Yeah. which can be really awesome
Yeah.
because you don't know where you're going to go.
Yeah.
But I get the fear of it. I mean, you also don't know what you will discover. And poetry's not like,
There's-
making widgets,
Right.
right? Like, so it if you allow yourself to truly not know, the discovery is huge.
Yeah, you have to have that kind of faith, as Frost would say. Or as Dan Chasen once said to me, he said, there is no secret Dakota ring for the poem.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And we live in a culture that really wants to control and to understand, to know.
Yeah.
So the fear makes sense. I just hope people can put that aside long enough to engage with the mystery of it. Because I think we, go back to that original question, which was, what was it? Can it change someone?
Yeah, how much can poetry writing change someone?
I would say exponentially. Like,
And
you
that's
truly have no idea
And
who
that's
you
the
will
beautiful
become.
and frightening thing about it, I think,
Exactly.
is what you're saying here,
Exactly.
and that is, when you say that's what people have a problem with, and sometimes they do, because it does want to upend and it doesn't want to be static. It, it resists forms and the meaning making. Yeah, wonderful.
The good news,
Yes.
I think there is good
I think
news.
that is good news, actually.
That's good news. But I think the other good news is I've never actually met anyone who becomes a worse person for writing poems. So there's that.
There you go. That's an interesting challenge. TC Tolbert has a challenge for us, as anyone. I would like to, we have a few minutes left because we can get riveting conversation, which is excellent, but I do want more poems from TC Tolbert if it's possible. Is there anything that the thoughts of change or meaning making or fluidity or has that inspired you?
That's kind
to
of
read it?
all I write about.
Any random
Yeah,
page.
you can kind of turn to any page. But maybe I will read something from Gephyromania
Outstanding.
since we picked it up. It'll just take me 1 second to find it. I apologize.
That's all right. A
'cause
fear of bridges.
we
I
were-
didn't. I'm not.
Well, an addiction to or an obsession with bridges.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Not
So the
not
complete
quite
opposite.
a fear.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Of crossing things
And I'm glad that you said that because the title of this poem is Crossing.
Oh, here we go.
And I will say, because I think it can be useful when thinking about, well, I'm sitting down to write a poem about this thing, and then how we discover a poem is really about something else. This originally started as just a simple breakup poem. Just
Yeah,
a very
exactly,
basic,
yeah.
like, I'm heartbroken. And then became about more than that, I think. Crossing. When you hold me, there are words for that. I do not remember the words for that, but I remember that there are words. There are not words for when you do not hold me. I remember that there are no words in the world, so I say them. Abolishing a line is only one way to mark it. My throat hurts from saying so much nothing. When I tell you I love you, what I really mean to ask is, can I change?
Thank you so much, DC.
Absolutely, thank you.
So I'm afraid that's all the time we have today. So thank you so much, TC, for joining us and leaving us with such beautiful words. And we will remember that there are words for that.
That's right. Thank you.
So join us next time, Community of Writers. Thank you.